As a certified life coach, I have a mission for my clients, and that is to identify and remove roadblocks from your path to personal success. And now it's about time I did the same for myself. My current roadblock is the massive pile of excuses I've made up not to launch a podcast, because everyone is doing it, being one of them. But with my bag packed with more experience and a new set of discipline, I know it's about time I got over that pile and got started. A topic I am particularly passionate about is attachment styles and how I can get to know myself better. In this podcast, you'll tag along the journey of me identifying where my anxious attachment came from, how it's manifesting itself in my life, and how I can, with knowledge, become a more secure version of myself. I pray you'll find it insightful, helpful, and occasionally funny. Welcome to Becoming Secure with Magsmindset. As I'm diving into my own story and experience learning about and understanding the impact of attachments, I believe it's crucial to explain what attachment theory is, as well as explaining the traits and causes of the most common ones. I was first thoroughly introduced to attachment styles when I was in coaching school, and my life coach at the time recommended the book Attached, written by Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. This book changed my life as it truly created a space where I got to know myself better. My love for this book catapulted me into diving deeper into the subject matter, and many have studied and written about attachment both prior and since. Attachment theory identifies 4 primary attachment styles. That includes how individuals form and maintain relationships. So let me get into it. Secure attachment describes individuals who are comfortable with both intimacy and autonomy. They tend to trust each other, feel confident in their relationships, and communicate their needs and emotions effectively. This attachment style usually stems from consistent and responsive caregiving during childhood. An example of what that might look like is that when a secure person is in a situation where they can fall in love, they think, okay, this is nice. I am not scared of falling in love. I can very much get myself into this commitment that is intimate and I will enjoy it. And alternatively, if they too are faced in a situation where they recognize that this relationship isn't going anywhere, or if their partner decides to break up with them, they will feel the pain and they will sit with that pain and accept it for what it is and then eventually move on. They are very well aware that there's a risk of falling in love, and that is to get your heart broken. And no matter what, they are okay with that because they trust themselves to get through it. Anxious, also known as preoccupied attachment, describes individuals who often seek a lot of closeness and approval because they fear abandonment. They might become overly dependent on their partners and show clingy or demanding behaviors out of worry about the relationship's stability. This attachment style often develops from inconsistent caregiving, where a child's needs are met unpredictably. What this might look like for an anxious person in a relationship, for instance, is that as long as the relationship is committed and predictable, then they will be okay within it and not necessarily feel the anxiety. But the moment there's an added layer of unpredictability or a risk of the relationship falling apart, they latch on for dear life and very much put that person on a pedestal and really much struggles to detach and see that this happiness that we so much desire, or this element from a relationship that we're very much missing in this one, we can get elsewhere. So someone in an anxious relationship might struggle to detach, but as long as there's stability and predictability and feeling chosen and safe in that environment, they will be very much okay. There are 2 types of avoidant attachments. It's a dismissive and fearful avoidance, so I'll describe those individually. Dismissive avoidant attachment describes individuals who prioritize independence and self-sufficiency, often avoiding close relationships to keep emotional distance. They might suppress or hide their feelings, which makes it hard for them to express emotions or form deep connections or communicate effectively. This attachment style can develop when caregivers are emotionally unavailable or unresponsive. What you will learn about the avoidance is that they value independence and freedom more than anything else. So the moment they feel something resembling suffocation, they will up and run. It is really terrifying for them to feel suffocated. And this might be because when they were young, there wasn't enough space for their feelings to hold, meaning that maybe they didn't really have anyone to talk to, or whenever they were crying as a child, maybe they were yelled at, or maybe when they needed someone to lean on, there was no space to let that out, meaning that a child that has the need to cry or express a lot of feelings, if they are yelled at for crying because the adult don't know how to handle it, they're essentially telling them that your feelings are too big for me to handle. So the avoidant will take this kind of subconscious responsibility to protect that. And by protecting that, they just push it down or keep it in. Therefore, opening up as an adult hasn't been practiced and it becomes really hard and is somewhat terrifying. An avoidant attached individual have yet to learn how to open up and feel safe in an environment where vulnerability is welcomed. The fearful avoidance is also known as scattered or disorganized attachments, which describes people who experience a lot of mix of wanting closeness and yet the fear of intimacy. They may display unpredictable or ambivalent behaviors in relationships because they fear getting hurt. This attachment style is often linked to past trauma or abuse, which leads to confusion and anxiety in relationships. When you're then falling in the spectrum of someone who is more fearful avoidant or scatteredly or detachedly avoidant, you will find yourself jumping in between these. It's like you crave intimacy and want it so bad, but the moment it becomes something you have to address or something to open up about or something that kind of threatens your independence a little bit, you run. To some extent, I do relate to this because I know that I have found myself wanting to disappear from Norway a lot. I've found myself wanting to travel and venture outwards. Like since 2018, I've lived in the US and moved to Thailand with an intention of staying there for a while. My plans changed though. I also moved to Greece for 5 months last year, and I never really wanted to go home until very recently, because what I found is that the more I was traveling and the more I was venturing outwards and coming home, I was always so triggered. And since I was so triggered at home, something made me realize that maybe this is where the healing takes place. What is it about home that makes me run? And I have thought about this in dynamics that I'm familiar to in friendships and past relationships, where someone who is very often traveling and feeling incredibly triggered every time they venture backwards makes me wonder, is it at home the healing takes place? What is it at home that has yet to be addressed to allow someone to find peace in stability, as opposed to needing to venture outwards and run when things get difficult? I'm not saying never travel or go out and about and venture out. I'm not saying that. I haven't gotten tremendous positivity and experience out of traveling. I sure have gotten so much good out of it. But the most I ever felt healed was whenever I allow myself to sit in the broken place in silence, address the issues, and heal. I believe that there are nuances to this that are important to address. None of us are walking around consciously acting like one or the other, at least not without knowledge about them prior. As a historically anxious attached individual, I wasn't aware of how humanly predictable my behavior was, and that it was a term to describe it. It was humbling. I also had no idea what caused it once I was introduced to the theory. I really had to dig deep. On the counter side, I don't believe that our caregivers were consciously treating us one way or another and aware of how their behavior would impact how we would connect romantically as adults. I fundamentally believe that we are all a result of what we have been exposed to, meaning we copy the behavior we observe until we're grown and aware enough to question whether or not it's a path we'd like to continue to follow. Our parents copied their parents' parenting and individual behavior because they didn't know anything else. That's what they witnessed. We all get impacted by those we surround ourselves with. whether we are aware of it or not. Additionally, whether we like to admit it or not. Think about it like this. When my grandparents' generation got pregnant as teenagers, they got married because traditionally and morally it was the right thing to do. At the time, Plan B and abortion wasn't an option. They would take accountability for their actions and accept the consequences. My parents' generation normalized divorce, and whether we want to admit it or not, it had an impact on how children of divorce view and believe in love today. The consequences of generational development is also commonly known as generational trauma. Generational trauma is trauma that extends from one generation to the next. This is why I believe the topic is valuable, and if there's one important thing I want you to take away from this episode is that this is not an opportunity to fall into the trap of victimization. This is not another opportunity to pass blame to our caregivers because of how we turned out as adults. This is an opportunity to get to know yourself better and take accountability for who you want to be. This is an opportunity to understand why you are the way that you are without attacking who got you there in the first place. This includes yourself. Today, we take matters into our own hands and use it as fuel to become the best version of ourselves, for ourselves, and for those we love. I'll encourage you as much as I daily have to remind myself to be humble, graceful, and mindful towards your caregivers. Like I said, most of us are subconsciously going through life, and chances are they've never even been introduced to attachment theory or generational trauma, at least not until recently. Our caregivers have their own set of unresolved trauma and never consciously deciding to impact any of us to become insecure or negatively affected in a way that bleeds into how we commit and act in romantic dynamics. I desire for all of us to forgive those who crossed us, including our own self-destruction, and move forward. No matter our trauma, it's our responsibility as individuals to heal, not your partner, not your parents, not your abuser. Finding inner peace and self-acceptance starts with you. My journey towards self-reliance and self-love began in 2016, the year I turned 20. I had been in a relationship for a year and a half where my boyfriend and I were seemingly very happy. 6 months prior, he had gone to serve in the military 600 miles away from our hometown. In the weeks leading to his departure, I felt a deep sense of anxiety growing within me, and I truly felt as though the weight of the pain could kill me. It didn't matter how much reassurance he provided for me before and after he left. A deep wound, the fear of abandonment, would surface like a tornado in a Texas summer. I would live and breathe for this relationship, and as much as people would tell me that I would get used to it and that the feeling would pass, it didn't. This manifested in many ways, but a few that I can share is in long paragraphs of text, endless, draining phone calls, and a self-pity show greater than a narcissist on his peak. This devastatingly resulted in my poor boyfriend being 600 miles away, feeling utterly suffocated, because my selfish desire didn't take into account that he was currently under the greatest pressure, mentally and physically, he had ever been. He was sharing every sleeping and waking moment in a team and never got any personal space, not to mention the agenda I had created down to the minute for every leave was granted. He was in fact suffocated, and this was an environment that I created. One summer morning, on one of his leaves, we were in his bed. He looked at me and he started crying. He explained that he no longer wanted to be in a relationship with me, and that he has decided that we were to break up. Despite the evidence that I have listed above, I never saw it coming, and it was the beginning of the end of my deeply insecure self. Although I surely did not know this at this moment. I genuinely thought that the pain was going to kill me, until he simply explained that he in fact did love me, and he did see a future with me, But I made it impossible to enjoy the present when I carefully planned every event in my life to avoid unpredictability and a lack of control. I wanted to control everything around me. Frankly, I wanted to control him too, a little bit. I wanted to know what he was doing, who he was with, and God forbid if he would be hanging out with women. I was deeply possessive and insecure. Lucky for me, my now ex-boyfriend is a fantastic guy. He encouraged me to dive within and find myself. Not necessarily because he would take me back if I loved myself, but it was a highly more likely chance that I would be more successful in love if I in fact did. This was the first time as an adult I sought out to God. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to breathe. I couldn't stop crying. And for a whole year and more, I cried myself to sleep every single day. But somehow God came through and my prayers were heard. This isn't the moral of the story, but him and I did stay together in a total of 5 years. And a major component of this is because in addition to him believing in me, I started to believe in me too. And I ventured down the rabbit hole of self-help books, daily affirmations, and continuous prayers. Throughout this podcast, I will share tools that help me grow into a confident version of myself and how I eventually learned to let go of control and possessive behavior. I thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to a pivotal story of my life, and I pray you're curious enough to stay tuned for future episodes. Until then, stay curious and get to know yourself better. I know that many can relate to attachment theory and find help and solace in learning more about it. It is also helpful knowing that you're not alone and that many share your experience. I hope and I believe that if we all share what our attachment look to us, we might just find that we are more similar than we think. By shedding a light on the parts of us that we are ashamed of, the vulnerable parts, we can all find validation in each other's stories, knowing that we too have been there. I want to hear your stories, and I would love to be able to share them with you. If you want to come share your version of how your attachment style manifested itself in your love life, please email me on magsmindset@gmail.com. I can't wait to hear from you.